No one had seen a human ship in over a century. Not since the collapse. Not since Earth burned itself out in wars of pride and power, and the remaining colonies fell into silence. The Galactic Empire thought the humans had finally done what everyone predicted. They wiped themselves out. And the galaxy moved on. Or at least, it tried to. But now, in the middle of the Empire's most secure sector, above the glittering skies of Virel Prime, something tore reality apart. It didn't slip through a wormhole. It didn't arrive with the buzzing hum of regulated hyperspace. It didn't send a comm beacon ahead. It just appeared. A single warship. Old. Black. Scarred like it had lived through 1,000 battles, and won every single one of them. It was massive, easily 4 times the size of an Imperial Dreadbreaker, yet its design didn't match anything in the known archives. No insignia, no markings, no heat signature. Just silence. The Imperial fleet was caught off guard. Not a single one of their sensors had picked it up until it was already within range of the planetary defense systems. Alarms screamed across Virel Prime as their satellites finally registered the presence. Emperor Kalrix himself watched from the Citadel spire, high above the city. His 3 hearts beat in dissonance, and his second set of eyelids blinked in disbelief. "What in the void is that?" he asked, more to himself than to the advisors scrambling behind him. High Marshal Torin stepped forward. We believe it's a human vessel, Your Eminence." Kalrix turned slowly. His scales darkened with rage. "That's impossible. Humanity is extinct." Torin swallowed. "Respectfully, sir, that is no longer accurate." Before Kalrix could respond, the warship moved. Not with the slow, calculated grace of modern Empire vessels. It shifted like a predator. No visible propulsion, no warning. It slid through space like it was swimming, and the fleet didn't know whether to fire or run. They did neither. They hesitated. That was their mistake. A single pulse erupted from the ship's underbelly, silent, colorless, and faster than light. In the blink of an eye, 4 Imperial cruisers ceased to exist. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. Disintegrated at the molecular level like they'd never been built. Panic didn't just ripple through the Empire, it erupted. All communication lines lit up, emergency protocols activated, civilian transports were grounded, and the planetary defense grid switched to full power. But none of it mattered. Because that ship, whatever it was, just hovered there, still and silent, like it hadn't even started yet. Torin's voice cracked. "We need to open a channel. Maybe it's a rogue AI. Maybe it can be reasoned with." Kalrix hissed through sharp teeth. "You want to talk to it?" "We don't have a choice." They tried. The Empire's finest diplomats, xenolinguists, signal techs, codebreakers, broadcast every known frequency. They spoke in 100 languages. They begged, demanded, threatened. The ship never responded. But eventually, it acted again. A transmission came through. Not a voice, not a message. Just a single image, burned across every comm screen, from the palace halls to the outer moons. A human face. Old, cold, staring. A face marked with years of war and loss. And beneath it, written in galactic standard, only 4 words. "We never left. Remember." The image faded. The panic didn't, because the Empire knew something then. Humanity hadn't vanished. They'd just been watching. And now they were back. The face haunted them. Every corner of the Empire, from the highest command posts to the smallest mining outposts, had seen that face. Gray eyes, wrinkled skin. The face of someone who had survived everything and regretted none of it. No name, no voice, just a warning. We never left. Remember. The Empire didn't know what to remember. They had buried humanity in their history logs, declared them a failed species, a warning of unchecked aggression and emotional volatility. The last human colony had gone dark 97 years ago, and the Empire had celebrated its final victory without ever firing the last shot. Humanity had imploded, they thought. But now, one ship, a ghost from Earth's grave, had wiped out a third of their outer fleet in seconds. Back at the Citadel spire, Emperor Calrix was no longer calm. His claws dug into the arms of his throne as advisors shouted and screens flashed with reports of rising unrest. Civilian broadcasts were in chaos. Words like ancient weapons, human revenge, galactic extinction were trending across every known media stream. "Have we found the origin of the ship?" he growled. Torin, pale and shaking, replied, "No signal trail, no entry point. Our long-range sensors showed no hyperspace tear. It's like it phased in from somewhere else." "You mean they developed tech beyond the Empire's reach?" Calrix said, more bitterly than inquisitively. "Impossible. We scouted every world. We destroyed every lab." "They must have survived in exile," said a new voice. A younger one, General Mirren, newly promoted. Half her face was cybernetic, the result of an old border war with the Jadari Confederacy. She rarely spoke unless she had something worth listening to. Calrix turned toward her. "You believe this is an intentional strike?" She nodded. "Absolutely. Not a test. Not a scouting vessel. That ship came here to be seen." "To show power?" "Number to remind us we're vulnerable." The room fell silent. Calrix hated silence. "We need options," he snapped. "Solutions, not theories. What assets do we have nearby?" Torin answered immediately. "Orbital Defense Platform Helios is within striking range, armed with nuclear plasma lances. It can respond in minutes." "And if it fails?" Mirren added. "If that ship wants us to attack?" Calrix ignored her. "Send the order." Torin hesitated. "Your Eminence, this could be seen as an act of—" "Do it." Within minutes, the command was sent. Helios turned its lances toward the human warship, each weapon the size of a tower, designed to destroy rogue moons and incoming asteroids. This was the Empire's most powerful defense installation. The warship didn't move, didn't respond. Just drifted, silently, ominously above Virel Prime. The lances fired. The sky lit up like a new sun was born. Radiation, plasma, magnetic shockwaves, all slammed into the black warship with full fury, and nothing happened. The lights dimmed. The warship remained untouched. Not a single scorch mark. Then, for the first time, it moved. Not slowly, not deliberately. One moment it was in orbit. The next, it was inside Helios. Somehow, impossibly, the ship phased through the defense platform. Surveillance cut out for 4.3 seconds, and when the cameras returned, Helios was empty. Gone. Every crew member, every weapon system, every scrap of metal, like it had been vacuumed out of reality. Only one thing remained, hovering above the ruins of the station, a human flag, charred, torn, ancient, but unmistakable. The Empire stared into the void and realized this wasn't an attack. It was a declaration, and humanity had just announced its return to the galaxy. Not as victims, but as a power the stars had long forgotten to fear. Whispers of surrender started spreading through the Imperial Senate by morning. The Senate, usually bloated with pride and empty threats, had never experienced such terror. Helios wasn't just a station. It was a statement. A monument to the Empire's dominance, to the fear it once instilled across 1,000 worlds. And now it was gone. Not destroyed, not even wrecked, erased. The message was clear. Your power means nothing. In the inner chambers, Calrix's fury turned inward. He didn't scream anymore. That would be weakness. Instead, he paced, silent, calculating, breathing through his gills as he considered every move that didn't end in the Empire's humiliation. "They're baiting us," Mirren said, still standing tall while others cowered. "Into what?" Kalrik snapped. "Another failure? Another weapon we don't understand?" "Number into making a mistake, one they can use to justify whatever they're planning next." Kalrix narrowed his eyes. "You speak like you understand them." She paused. "I've studied them. My thesis at the War College was on early human warfare tactics. I was mocked for it." Kalrix sneered. "Perhaps they should have mocked you harder. Perhaps they should have listened." He said nothing, but his silence was permission enough. "Their wars were personal," she continued. "They didn't fight for planets or treaties. They fought for revenge, for honor, for ghosts. And when they couldn't win with strength, they used fear. They let their enemies destroy themselves with paranoia." "Are you saying we shouldn't act?" "I'm saying someone needs to talk to them." That idea sent a wave of uncomfortable shifting through the room. Talk to a human? A relic species? A ghost of chaos? But Kalrix had been Emperor long enough to recognize the real threat. Not the ship, but the image it projected. Fear was spreading faster than any weapon. Civil unrest was already sparking on 5 core worlds. Military captains were questioning their orders. Fringe systems had started defecting, sending silent signals of allegiance to whoever these humans were now. "They planned this," Kalrix said, almost to himself. "They waited until we were too fat, too self-satisfied, too arrogant. They've probably been watching us for decades." "Centuries," Mirren said. "They didn't survive. They thrived. Somewhere out there they've been building, hidden from our sensors, hidden from the galaxy. And now they've come to remind us what we forgot." A sudden transmission cut through the room like a blade. It wasn't Imperial. It wasn't even broadcast. It forced itself onto every screen, hijacking every frequency, even those deep within secure military channels. And this time, there was a voice. Gravelly. Human. Male. "You forgot us. That was your first mistake." Silence. "We watched. We remembered. Every colony you burned, every leader you executed, every child you told the stars weren't for them." A pause. "We didn't die. We adapted. You evolved in peace. We evolved in war." Static crackled. "We offer you a choice, submission or extinction." The signal cut. No coordinates, no response to counter signals, just a broadcast heard by everyone. And the galaxy trembled. Back in the chamber, Mirren was the only one breathing steady. Torin stammered, We need to mobilize the core legions." "Alert the Inquisitors. Activate the Vault protocols." "No," Mirren said calmly. "They'll expect that." "Then what do you propose?" She stared at the screen that now showed only the Empire's flag, slightly trembling, as if uncertain of its future. "We find them," she said, "not to fight. To understand." Kalrix turned slowly toward her. His voice was quiet now, too. "And if they don't want to be understood?" Mirren's cybernetic eye flickered. "Then we pray they haven't changed as much as we have." Because deep down, she feared the truth everyone else refused to say. The Empire had built itself on the myth that humanity was dead. And now, with just one ship, one face, and one sentence, that myth had become a nightmare. Across the stars, the Empire's borders began to bleed. Outposts went dark. Trade convoys refused to fly. Systems on the edge of Imperial space began broadcasting strange signals, coded messages in dead languages, some even using old Earth dialects long erased from official archives. But someone had kept them. Someone had waited. Within the Empire, paranoia bloomed like a plague. Governors turned on governors. High-ranking officers accused each other of human sympathies. Even in the military, whispers of the return grew louder. Some feared it. Others secretly welcomed it. And in the shadows of Varel Prime, someone celebrated it. Kyle Voss had lived many lives. Spy, assassin, traitor, survivor. He didn't care what label they used anymore. All he cared about was the truth he had buried for years. The humans weren't extinct. And now, they were here to finish what they started. Kale watched the chaos unfold from a darkened observatory buried beneath the capital's surface. From there, he could see the entire system unraveling one transmission at a time. And in the center of it all, hovering like death made real, was that ship. He smiled. "Took you long enough," he muttered. His comm clicked. A voice spoke on the other end, soft and mechanical. "Is the Emperor preparing for war?" Kyle leaned back, eye catching the glimmer of red tracking lights across the warship's hull. "He's preparing for his own funeral. He just doesn't know it yet." "You've done well, Agent Voss. We'll be arriving soon. Phase 2 begins within the day." Kyle's smile widened. "And the girl?" There was a pause. "She'll remember when the time comes. We made sure of it." He nodded. Somewhere on Varel Prime, hidden in the labyrinth of society, a sleeper agent, a human born and raised in secret, was already waking up. Planted there decades ago, raised to believe she was imperial, trained, conditioned. And now, with the ship's arrival, her memories would start coming back. A war wasn't coming. It had already started. Years ago, and now it was unfolding exactly as planned. Back in the Citadel, Mirren stood alone on the command deck. She had sent every available scout vessel out to scan fringe space, hoping to trace any data signatures left by the human ship. So far, nothing. It was like chasing a ghost with no shadow. But her instincts screamed louder than her logic. They were here for a reason. Her mind turned to the warning: submission or extinction. But those weren't options. Those were declarations. The humans weren't here to ask for anything. They were giving the Empire a chance to surrender, yes, but not because they feared war, because they knew they would win it. A junior officer approached her quietly. "General Mirren, there's been a development." "What kind?" "Unauthorized access of restricted surveillance footage. Sector 9C, Imperial Archives Vault. Footage was copied and erased before we could contain the breach." Her eyes narrowed. "Who accessed it?" The officer hesitated. "It's classified. Eyes only." "I am eyes only," she snapped. But even as he handed her the datapad, she knew something deeper was unraveling. The footage showed a child, dark-haired, human features, being smuggled into the Imperial capital under false registry 20 years ago. The name listed? Lyra Mirren. She stared at the screen. Her name. Her face. But she didn't remember that child. Didn't remember being anyone but General Mirren of the Imperial Armed Forces. Her hand trembled slightly, datapad slipping from her fingers. No. The ship didn't just come to intimidate the Empire. It came to wake its weapons. And she was one of them. Lyra didn't remember falling. One moment she was standing on the command deck, datapad in hand, watching the face of a girl who wore her eyes, her mouth, but not her memories. The next, she was on her knees, surrounded by silence. Her officers didn't move. They didn't speak. None of them knew what to say to a general who'd just found out she might be a traitor to everything she stood for. Her breath came in shallow, clipped gasps. She barely heard the voice of the junior officer, stammering something about medical assistance. She waved him off. She didn't need medicine. She needed the truth. Back in her quarters, sealed, secure, buried under 5 levels of access codes, She accessed her personal files, scrubbed them clean. No history before age 10, no school photos, no early medical logs, all standard for military-born children. But now it reeked of fabrication, and the more she dug, the worse it got. She had always wondered why she didn't remember her parents, why she was raised by the state in the military foster program. They said her family had died in an asteroid mining accident, that there were no bodies to recover. She had asked questions once, got punished for it. After that, she didn't ask again. But now she couldn't stop. She stared into the mirror. For the first time, she looked at herself. Not as a decorated general, not as a hardened warrior, but as a question without an answer. And then, a whisper. Not from the room, from inside her head. A voice she didn't recognize, yet felt buried deep in her bones. You are not theirs. She froze. Who said that? Silence. Her pulse raced. Another whisper, gentler now. You've always been ours. She stumbled back from the mirror. Her reflection shifted. For a split second, the glass didn't show her Imperial uniform. It showed another version. Same face, same scars, but dressed in black battle armor, marked with the sigil she'd only seen once. On the flag left behind on Helios. The human flag. The image faded just as fast, but it was too late. Something was waking up inside her. She ran a scan on herself. DNA, neural pathways, psychological profiling. All of it came back, altered, modified, not recently. This was old tech, ancient almost, human-made, designed to bury memory, delay identity, triggered by something. Something like that ship. And now the lock was broken. She sat on the edge of her bed, palms over her face, trying to calm the storm in her chest. Her comm chimed. Encrypted. Unknown origin. She almost ignored it. Then she didn't. She opened the channel. Kael Voss's face appeared, calm as ice. Hello, Lyra. Or should I say, Commander Lyra Thorne. The name hit her like a punch. I don't know you, he smirked. You will. Soon. What the hell is happening to me? You're remembering. Remembering what? He leaned forward. Who you are, what you were born for, and why you were placed right where you are now. This is a trick, some psychological weapon. It's not a trick, it's justice, Lyra. We're not here to destroy the Empire. She laughed bitterly. You erased an entire space station. We're here to replace the Empire, one piece at a time, starting with the pieces they stole from us. She stood, pacing. Why me? You're one of us, a true-born child of the Resistance. They took you when you were 5, reprogrammed you, raised you to kill your own kind. Her hands curled into fists. If that's true, why did you wait? Why now? He looked past her, almost sad. Because now you're ready. The screen went black. No signal trace, nothing, just silence. But her mind wasn't silent anymore. It screamed with flashes, broken memories rising like ash from an old fire, a woman's voice, a man holding her hand, a place not made of steel and fear. A promise that one day she'd come back to them. And the warship still hovered above Varel Prime, patient and watching. Because it wasn't just there for the Empire. It was there for her. The rain came down hard that night. Varel Prime rarely saw rain. The climate regulators over the capital were designed to keep things pristine, dry, and sterile. But tonight, the system failed. Or maybe someone made it fail. Either way, the sky opened up like it was weeping. Lyra walked through the storm with her coat pulled tight. No guards, no shuttle. She needed to feel it. Every drop, every step, every part of the city she thought she had protected all her life. Because now, she wasn't sure who she had been protecting it from. Kael Voss had shattered everything. Or maybe he had just peeled the truth back. Commander Alira Thorne, she whispered to herself. The name felt foreign and familiar, like hearing your own voice in a recording, recognizable but distant. She didn't know where she was going until she got there. The Imperial Archives, specifically Sub-Level 12, unauthorized access was treason. Every corner was tracked, every vault monitored. But Lyra wasn't just a general. She was the general. She still had command override. And now she wanted answers the Empire had buried. She entered the code. Her fingers moved without hesitation, like they remembered something her conscious mind hadn't caught up to. The vault hissed open. Rows of old physical data chips lined the room, dusty and forgotten. No one bothered with hard backups anymore. That was the mistake. Humans didn't rely on convenience. They hid their secrets where machines couldn't reach. Her eyes scanned quickly. Then she saw it. A file labeled Thorne, redacted. Her breath caught. She inserted the chip. The terminal flickered to life, slower than the newer ones, but it worked. A series of logs appeared. Images, audio files, DNA reports. Her mother, her father. Both confirmed members of the Orion Reclaimers, one of the last human resistance cells before the collapse. But they hadn't collapsed. They had evacuated. One video showed her as a toddler, sitting on a metallic floor, drawing the stars. Her mother's voice behind the camera. She keeps drawing the same constellation. Every day. Like she remembers something we haven't taught her yet. Another file. Blurry footage of an Imperial raid. Soldiers in dark uniforms dragging her parents away. She, barely 5, was wrapped in a blanket, injected with a sedative, and carried off by a man in gold-trimmed armor. High Marshal Vren Targus. She blinked. That couldn't be. Vren Targus had been Kalrix's mentor, the one who built the military foster program, and he had taken her. Her entire life had been fabricated by the people who murdered her family. She clenched her jaw, shutting the terminal off. Her hands were trembling, but her mind wasn't. For the first time in her life, it was clear. As she turned to leave, her calm crackled to life again, unfiltered, unsecured. "General Mirren," came a frantic voice, "you need to return to the command deck, now." "What happened?" "It's the human ship. It's gone." "What do you mean gone? Did it leave orbit?" "No, ma'am, it disappeared." She paused. "Disappeared how?" "Not cloaked, not jumped. Gone. Sensors never even registered a hyperspace signature. Just vanished." Her heart thudded. "Were there any traces left behind?" The officer hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. One thing." "What?" "It dropped something. A pod. It landed outside the capital. No tech signature. Organic-only trace." She froze. "Coordinates?" The officer read them off, and Lyra's breath left her chest. She knew that place, a forested zone just beyond the outer districts, designated uninhabitable, sealed off for decades. But now she remembered. It had been her sanctuary, before they wiped her mind, before they told her she belonged to them. Without answering, she killed the comm feed and turned back. The warship was gone. But the next phase wasn't. It had just begun. The forest was nothing like she remembered, or maybe it was exactly as she remembered, just through the wrong lens. Back when she was a child, the Empire told her it was a restricted zone, contaminated during the planetary terraforming experiments. But there were no toxins here, no radiation, just silence, soil, and trees older than the capital itself. Lyra moved through the undergrowth with slow, steady steps. Her weapon stayed holstered, but her hand never strayed far from it. She wasn't expecting an ambush, but she wasn't naive either. The pod had landed somewhere in this zone. "A message," Kale had said. Or maybe a trigger. Her boots crunched on brittle leaves. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. The deeper she went, the more the sound of civilization faded. No transports, no security drones, just wind and memory. Then she saw it. Half buried in the earth, nestled between the roots of a gnarled tree, was a pod. Not military, not like anything in the Empire's database. It was smooth, blackened metal, scarred with use but intact. No lights, no hum. It just sat there, humming in silence like a sealed confession. As she approached, it responded. A faint pulse rippled across its surface, and the shell split with a soft hiss. Inside was no weapon, just a child, no older than 6, pale skin, dark hair matted from sleep, breathing, unconscious, wrapped in a thermal layer that bore the same insignia as the flag left on Helios. Lyra's breath hitched. She crouched slowly, trying to understand what she was seeing. Why would they send a child? Then the realization hit her like a lightning strike. It wasn't a message for the Empire. It was a message for her. This wasn't just any child. It was her, the same eyes, the same nose, a perfect genetic match. She didn't need a scanner to know. The humans hadn't just woken her memories. They'd restored what the Empire stole. Her unaltered self. The pod wasn't time travel. It was time preservation. Somehow they had taken a biological imprint of her before her abduction and saved it in stasis all these years. Why? For leverage? For backup? Number for truth. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the girl's forehead. Warm. Real. Alive. Behind her, a soft rustle. She drew her weapon instantly and turned. Kyle Voss stood in the clearing, arms raised. "No need for that," he said. "You've already remembered." She didn't lower the gun. This isn't possible." He stepped closer, slow and calm, like approaching a wounded animal. "It's not a weapon, Lyra. It's a mirror." "Why show me this?" "To remind you who you are, what they turned you into, and what you can still become." Her hand shook. "She's me. She was you. Before they erased it. Before they trained you to be their sword." Lyra stared down at the girl, something fragile cracking open inside her. Memories came faster now. Her mother's voice, warm hands tucking her into bed, stars painted on the ceiling of a rusted hull. "You said I was placed here for a reason," she said, voice low. "What reason?" Kyle's eyes darkened. "To destroy the Empire from within." She didn't flinch. "Not this time. You want me to assassinate Kalrix?" "Number that would make him a martyr. We want you to take something far more valuable." She turned to him. "The military?" He shook his head. "The truth. We want you to speak it. Not in secret, not in shadow. On the Empire's own channels, on the Senate floor. Let the people see what they've done, what they've built their power on. You. And if they don't believe me, they don't have to. They just have to hear you. The truth will do the rest." Lyra looked down at the child again. Her own face, pure, unbroken. "I don't know if I can do this." Kale's voice was softer now. "You already are." Behind them, the sky cracked open. The warship was back, only now it wasn't alone. They didn't hide anymore. Not the humans, not their ships, not their truth. By the time Lyra returned to the capital, 17 human warships hovered silently across the Varel skyline. No cloaks, no warnings. They positioned themselves like monuments, not invaders, watching, waiting, daring the Empire to act first. And for the first time in centuries, the Empire didn't know how to answer. Inside the Citadel spire, the Senate chamber was in chaos. Senators screamed for war, demanded blood, begged for guarantees of safety. Generals argued. Advisors whispered of coups. A few even began quietly boarding escape vessels. The myth of the Empire had cracked. Fear was seeping in like floodwater. And then the doors opened. Lyra walked in alone. No guards, no armor, just her black officer's uniform, creased, rain-stained, and utterly silent. Eyes turned. Whispers followed her like smoke. The Emperor sat above them all, unmoved. His golden armor gleamed beneath the chamber lights, his gaze cold and reptilian. "You return now," he said, "as our skies are occupied. Explain yourself, General Mirren." She looked up at him, and for once there was no fear in her. "My name," she said, voice calm, "is Commander Lyra Thorne, born on the human colony vessel Sola Terra, abducted during the siege of Diraxis, indoctrinated under the Empire's orphan program, raised as your weapon." The chamber froze. She tapped a small device in her palm. Every screen around the room flickered, showing raw, unaltered footage from the archives. Her childhood, the raid, the fabrication of her identity, the voices of her real parents. "You built your power on lies," she continued. "On genocide, on erasure lies," Kalrix growled, standing now. "Treasonous slander from a broken mind." She stepped forward. "You didn't just destroy our worlds. You stole our children. You made them forget, made them kill in your name, but we remember now." The room erupted. Screams, accusations, threats of execution. Lyra raised her voice above the storm. "We don't want your throne." She turned to the cameras broadcasting to every world across the Empire. "We want your people to see, to choose, not through fear, through truth." Above them, the warships began broadcasting her speech across the galaxy. Every outpost, every station, every home. Some wept, others raged, but no one ignored it. In a single moment, the face of the Empire cracked, and something older and stronger began to rise beneath it. Memory. Kalrix stepped forward, claws flexed, his voice trembling with fury. "You think one speech, one half-blood child can break 1,000 years of rule?" Lyra met his eyes. But your own lies will." She turned her back on him and walked out. He didn't follow. He knew. It was over. 3 days later, the warships left Varel space. No city was burned. No empire was conquered. It collapsed on its own. Governors defected. Fleet admirals surrendered. Systems declared neutrality. People refused orders. And through it all, the truth kept spreading like wildfire. The Empire's heart didn't explode. It simply stopped beating. And as for Lyra? She disappeared from public view after the collapse. Some said she returned to the human fleet. Some claimed she stayed behind, helping rebuild the broken colonies. Others whispered she was never real at all, just a symbol, a ghost sent to break a giant's spine with a whisper. But one thing was certain. The warship that started it all, the one that appeared without warning and silenced an empire, it still roams, unbound, unseen, but watching, always watching. And above the stars, etched into the hull in a language long forgotten, are 4 words. We never left. Remember. The sky above Centauri 9 was a dying shade of orange, smeared with the ash of fallen ships and the stench of defeat. The Galactic Coalition's last outpost burned slowly, like the hope that had flickered in its soldiers' eyes just days ago. Commander Threx of the Jirvok Dominion watched from the ridge, 4 beady eyes scanning the smoldering ruins. The war was all but over. The Coalition had fought bravely, but it wasn't enough. Their fleets were decimated, their leaders captured, their morale shattered. "All that's left is the Earth detachment," growled Threx, his spiked mandibles twitching with satisfaction. "Humans, the last rats in the sewer." General Kator, the Dominion's strategist, stepped forward with a skeptical glance. "They're unpredictable, Threx. You've seen what they did at Gerrel Prime. Half our battalion gone in an hour?" Threx snorted, a wet, guttural sound. "Desperation makes them clever, but now they have nothing. No reinforcements, no fleet, just dirt and bones. Far below them, in the shadows of the ruined outpost, the humans had gone silent. No signals, no movement, not even a trace on scanners. Some believed they'd already fled. Others feared worse, that they were planning something. Inside the underground bunker, Captain Mason Cade leaned against the steel wall, wiping grime from his face with a shaking hand. He looked like hell. Skin smudged with soot, eyes bloodshot, armor cracked. Around him, the last dozen members of the 9th Human Recon Regiment sat in silence. These weren't ordinary soldiers. These were the ones Earth sent when diplomacy failed, when war became extinction, the unspoken elite. "We're down to 13, Mason muttered, voice low. "No medics, no drones, no uplink, and the Dominion thinks we're dead." "Then let's keep it that way," said Corporal Vega, locking another cartridge into her plasma rifle. She'd taken a hit last week, fractured ribs, concussion, but she hadn't stopped moving. None of them had. That's what made them dangerous. Mason nodded, eyes narrowing. "Good, because if they're convinced we're ghosts, then let's haunt the bastards." They didn't cheer. They never did. This wasn't about morale. It was survival, revenge, duty. One by one they moved through the dark, checking gear, securing their weapons, silently preparing for the kind of war Dominion soldiers weren't bred to understand. The human kind. Dirty, vicious, relentless. Above them, Threx ordered his forces to advance into the bunker zone. 1,000 Dominion soldiers, armored in exosuits and wielding molecular disruptors, surged forward, confident, loud, ready to wipe out the last remnants of Earth's defiance. They didn't know they were walking into a maze of booby traps, pressure mines, and rerouted thermal vents that cooked intruders alive. They didn't know the 9th had memorized every inch of the terrain, had wired the ruins to collapse with the pull of a cord, had stockpiled enough stolen explosives to blow a crater the size of a stadium. They didn't know the humans weren't hiding. They were waiting. The first explosion wasn't loud. It was deep, like the growl of an ancient beast beneath the earth, shaking the bones of every Dominion soldier within a half-mile radius. Then came the second, louder, sharper. It split a battalion right down the middle, sending metal and flesh skyward in a rain of molten gore. Screams followed. Not human. Dominion, high-pitched, confused, terrified. Captain Mason Cade didn't flinch. He stood motionless, eyes locked on the feed coming from the bunker's flickering recon cams. Every trap was working exactly as planned, a symphony of destruction conducted by Earth's most savage tacticians. "Zone 3's collapsing," Vega whispered, smiling grimly as she peered over Cade's shoulder. "That's at least 50 of them gone. Probably more." Mason didn't answer. His hand hovered over the detonator for Zone 4. The Dominion troops had clustered in the center of a burned-out depot, right where they were supposed to. They'd underestimated Earth again. That was their mistake. It always was. He pressed the switch. The earth split open with a roar that sent a shockwave through the ruined valley. Plasma tanks hidden beneath the rubble ignited in unison, vaporizing 3 full squads and turning the ground into a bubbling pit of fire and molten steel. Dominion soldiers scattered like insects. Some fired into the darkness, others ran, none escaped. The humans emerged from the smoke like shadows. No battle cry, no flag waving, just silence and precision. Corporal Vega dropped 2 with shots to the skull. Private Hanlon launched a drone swarm that burst mid-air, raining shrapnel coated in a neurotoxin the Dominion hadn't even known existed. Sergeant Reyes, the quiet one, slit throats with a blade soaked in battery acid. These weren't just soldiers. They were predators. Trained in wars Earth didn't talk about. taught to kill in silence and survive in hell. Mason moved like a ghost between pillars of fire, his armor already stained with alien blood. A Dominion captain lunged at him, spear raised. Mason ducked, rolled, and drove a knife into the creature's throat, twisting until he felt cartilage break. He whispered, "Too slow," and shoved the body aside like garbage. General Kator watched in horror from the ridge. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. Commander Threx's mandibles trembled. "They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to erase us." He was right. Because when humans lost their fleets, they didn't surrender. When they lost their allies, they didn't panic. When the world said, "You've already lost," humans started planning. And now, 13 Earth soldiers were turning a battlefield into a graveyard. Mason regrouped with his team as the second wave collapsed. 10 left now. 3 gone in the last hour. No time to mourn. No strength for tears. Just grit and blood. "Phase 2 starts in 20, he said, breath ragged but steady. "Reyes, rig the west ridge. Vega, get the last drone swarm online. Hanlon, I want eyes on the enemy comms." "And the rest of us?" asked Sergeant Nix, his voice rough from inhaling smoke. Mason glanced at the rising dust cloud in the east. "We meet them head on. Make 'em feel what Earth's wrath really looks like." No speeches, no glory, only vengeance, only Earth. The dust cloud thickened as the third wave of Dominion forces marched in, larger and angrier than before. They had finally realized this wasn't a mop-up. This was war. Real war. The kind they weren't used to fighting. Not the clean, strategic annihilation they'd practiced in their simulations. Not the diplomatic showdowns where planets bowed before superior tech. This was chaos. This was pain. This was humanity unchained. General Cotter barked orders from the temporary command unit stationed behind a line of armored carriers. He paced furiously, his thick claws scraping across the holomap as unit after unit blinked out of existence. "Send in the Scorch teams. I want the entire sector buried." "But the terrain is unstable!" A technician tried to protest. Cotter slammed a claw down. "Then let it collapse. I don't care if we lose soldiers. I want them exterminated." Down below, Captain Mason Cade had already seen it coming. From behind the twisted remnants of what used to be a comms tower, he watched the new troops fan out. Cautious now. Slower. No more overconfidence. They'd learned fear. That made them slightly smarter, but also easier to manipulate. "Vega," Mason said through his earpiece. "Light 'em up." From a hidden alcove in the rubble, Vega grinned and pulled the trigger on a makeshift mortar rig. The shell shrieked through the sky and landed dead center in the Dominion formation. Not just explosives this time, chemical agents harvested from their own dead. The Dominion screamed as their armor corroded from the inside out, melting through skin, muscle, and bone. Private Hanlon, working fast with bloodied hands, hacked into the enemy's comms frequency. Static hissed before he found a channel. "You wanted Earth," he whispered through the line. "You got it." The comms erupted with guttural curses, panic, confusion. Back at the ridge, Threx's patience finally snapped. "These animals are poisoning our air, stealing our weapons, using our tech against us. How?" Kator's eyes narrowed. "Because they don't think like soldiers. They think like survivors. They don't just want to kill us, Threx. They want to break us first." And that's exactly what Mason was doing. By now, half of his remaining team was engaged in direct combat, tearing through Dominion squads with guerrilla-style ambushes and relentless hit-and-runs. Reyes had rigged a bridge with C4 and waited until 5 enemy tanks rolled over it before blowing the supports, sending tons of screaming metal and bodies into the abyss. Sergeant Nix, wounded and barely standing, still managed to drop 3 with a modified sniper round that turned into shrapnel mid-air. He laughed as he went down. laughing as his chest bled out, still shooting, even in his last breath. Mason reached him too late. He kneeled beside Nix's body and closed his comrade's eyes. "One by one," he murmured. "We'll make every death count." Vega knelt beside him. "We're down to 7. "Doesn't matter," Mason said, jaw clenched. "We'll bring the Dominion to their knees, even if it's just one of us left crawling." The next attack came faster. Dominion warships opened fire on the canyon walls, collapsing parts of the terrain and cutting off possible escape routes. But that was never part of Mason's plan anyway. There was no escape, just payback. Hanlon's voice crackled through the comm. "Captain, big one incoming, command unit. I think Threx is coming down himself." Mason stood up slowly, eyes narrowing through his visor. "Good." Because it wasn't enough to kill Dominion soldiers anymore. It was time to humiliate their leaders. Captain Mason Cade stood on what was left of the old lookout tower, wind howling through twisted steel and scorched beams. The Dominion's war machines were closing in, and they brought their general with them. Threx, the butcher of Lyraxis, the one who'd torched 7 colonies and strung up prisoners as trophies, the one who thought humans were weak, soft, stupid. That was about to change. Beneath him, the squad scrambled to reposition. What was left of the 9th Recon Regiment had taken heavy losses, more than half the team gone, some in pieces, others missing altogether. Mason didn't need to ask if they'd make it out. He already knew the answer. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an execution. "Hanlon, what's the count on the incoming units?" Mason asked through the comm. Hanlon's voice crackled with static. 70+ infantry, 4 armored crawlers, and 1 command tank. Mason's eyes narrowed. "Threx." "Yeah," Hanlon confirmed. "Signal match. That ugly bastard came down in person." Corporal Vega adjusted the scope on her rifle, perched on a ledge just above him. "You want the shot when he steps out?" "No," Mason said, calm and cold. "I want him to see me before he dies." Across the canyon, the Dominion forces advanced with surgical confidence. No more recklessness. They'd learned fear, but they hadn't learned respect. That's what today was about. The last few humans weren't going to go out begging. They were going to make legends. Mason signaled Reyes and Vega. "Positions locked?" "Locked," Reyes whispered from the eastern ridge. "Tunnel charges prepped. 30 seconds and the flank collapses." "Then we bring it down," Mason growled. "Let's turn this place into a burial site." The first blast ripped through the leftmost hill, sending tons of debris cascading into the enemy line. Screams followed. A crawler tumbled sideways, metal shrieking as it crushed a squad beneath it. The Dominion soldiers tried to regroup, barking orders in their harsh, insect-like tongue, but the humans gave them no time. From the smoke and ash, Mason charged. He was a blur of steel and fury, rifle in one hand, blade in the other. His boots hit the dirt with thunderous speed, and behind him came Vega and Reyes, guns blazing, lighting up the valley with a rain of fire. Hanlon stayed behind, feeding them enemy positions and jamming the Dominion signals. He was the brain. Mason was the hammer. Threx emerged from the command tank just in time to see his forces getting slaughtered by 7 filthy, bloodied humans who fought like gods possessed. Mason's blade found another throat. He spun, fired twice into the face of a Dominion elite, and ducked behind a fallen crawler. Blood, thick, green, and hissing, splattered across his armor. Across the field, Threx roared, pointing one massive claw at Mason. "That one! Bring me his head!" A dozen Dominion soldiers swarmed toward him. Mason didn't flinch. He activated the charges strapped beneath his chest plate, dropped a smoke pellet, and vanished into the chaos. Seconds later, a line of fire erupted between the crawling smoke. Reyes had flanked them, setting off another chain of mines that sent the soldiers flying into the sky, Mason leapt over a body, landed hard, rolled, and came up face to face with Threx. The two stared at each other, the battlefield falling silent for just a moment. Human and alien, predator and executioner. Hatred burned in Threx's eyes. But Mason? Mason looked bored. "Big talk from a bug who's never bled," he said coolly. Threx charged. Mason met him head-on. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't cinematic, it was savage. Threx slammed Mason into the dirt, but Mason drove his combat knife into the soft joint under Threx's shoulder plate. The alien shrieked. Mason's blade twisted. Threx clawed at him, slicing a line across Mason's ribs. They rolled through mud and broken bone. Mason took a punch to the side of the head. Helmet cracked, blood flowing. But he didn't stop. He shoved a grenade into Threx's abdomen port and kicked him backward. Threx looked down, saw the blinking red light, and snarled. "You wouldn't!" The explosion lit up the valley. When the dust cleared, only one figure was standing. Limping. Bloodied. Barely breathing. Mason Cade. He spit out a mouthful of blood and stared at the scattered remains of the Dominion commander. "One down," he muttered. "Now let's finish the rest." The smell of scorched alien flesh still hung thick in the air. Captain Mason Cade stumbled backward, his knees nearly buckling. He'd taken a direct hit to the ribs, and every breath now felt like sucking in knives. Blood trickled from a gash above his eyebrow, and his hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the raw adrenaline wearing off. Threx was gone. The Dominion's so-called war god was nothing more than green mist and shattered armor. But killing a leader didn't end a war, not when the enemy still had an army. "Mason, come in!" Hanlon's voice crackled through the comms. "We've got movement, multiple signatures, heavy equipment. They're sending in the annihilators. You've got 5 minutes, maybe less." Mason cursed under his breath and forced himself upright. "Rally what's left. We fall back to the trench line and make our last stand there." Corporal Vega's voice came through next, strained but steady. "I'm down to 1 mag and half a charge pack." "You'll make it last," Mason replied. "We all will." 7 had gone down to 5. Reyes was dragging a shattered leg. Hanlon had burns up one side of his arm from an earlier blast. Vega's armor was cracked in 2 places. The last member, Lee, hadn't spoken in an hour. He'd lost his brother during the last ambush and just kept moving, like a ghost behind them. They reached the trench, dug days ago in desperation, reinforced with what scraps of Dominion metal they could find. It was narrow, tight, but defensible. Barely. Mason climbed up the edge and peered through a broken scope at the oncoming force. The annihilators were twice the size of standard crawlers, moving on 8 legs with mounted plasma cannons, their hulls glowing red-hot from the reactors inside. Around them marched elite Dominion guards, silent, methodical, untouched by fear. 20 minutes ago, Vega muttered behind him. "I thought we might actually win this." Mason looked back at her, his lip curling into a tired smirk. "We did win." "Then why are they still coming?" He didn't answer. Because he didn't need to. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about scarring the enemy, making them regret ever stepping foot on human ground. Teaching them that if Earth fell, it would fall clawing out throats and biting through armor. Mason crouched and passed out what little ammo remained. "Set charges. Focus fire on the joints. When they get close, we drop the trench on them." Reyes laughed weakly. "That's the worst plan I've ever heard." "It'll work," Mason said, and for some reason they all believed him. The ground shook. Dust fell like snow. The machines were coming. And then, something strange. A sound. Low at first, faint, but growing louder, like thunder, like engines. Mason froze. Hanlon was the first to spot it. "South sky, incoming crafts, multiple human IFF tags. I repeat, human signatures." They looked up as 6 atmospheric dropships broke through the clouds, their undercarriages glowing with descent burners. Painted black, marked with Earth's old military insignia, units no one had seen in years. Ghost units, the kind only whispered about. One dropship opened its side door mid-air, and a figure jumped out, free-falling with nothing but a reinforced exosuit and a shock-absorbent booster pack. The man landed like a meteor. Dust exploded outward. Dominion soldiers stumbled, confused, as the figure rose from the crater. 7 feet tall in a powered assault rig, visor glowing red, plasma blade in one hand and railgun in the other. The armor bore one word. Hell jumpers. Mason's mouth twitched. Number freaking. Way more drop pods followed. 12, 2 dozen. Then ground tanks rumbled over the ridge behind them, Earth's insignia etched into their hulls. Command had finally responded, or maybe the hell jumpers had come on their own. Either way, the tide just shifted. Captain Cade, a deep voice crackled through the comms, patched directly to his helmet. We'll take it from here. Mason grinned, blood dripping from his chin. Too late, he said. We've already started the party. And with that, Earth's most dangerous soldiers met their match, fighting not for survival now, but for revenge. The battlefield screamed as the Helljumpers charged forward, and the Dominion, for the first time, hesitated. They came to finish the war. The Helljumpers didn't waste time with strategy briefings or caution. They didn't send drones ahead or wait for favorable conditions. They just landed and started killing. From the moment the boots hit the ground, the battlefield shifted. Where Mason and his team had been fighting tooth and nail just to survive, the Helljumpers turned it into a slaughter. One of them carried a rail cannon the size of a small car, vaporizing Dominion elites in a single blast. Another moved with a kind of robotic precision, dual-wielding plasma axes that tore through metal like cloth. It wasn't just tech, it was attitude. These were Earth's worst nightmares given form. Soldiers trained for missions that were never supposed to exist. Missions where survival wasn't even part of the objective. Shock and erase. That was their motto. Captain Mason Cade stood in the trench, hands still tight around his rifle, heart thudding as he watched what he could only describe as a revenge storm sweep across the valley. They're not just pushing the line, Vega murmured beside him. They're obliterating it. Mason nodded slowly. This is what Earth sends when it doesn't want survivors. The Dominion forces were faltering now, panic setting in despite their command structure. With Threx gone and the battlefield torn to shreds, they'd expected to steamroll the last of the human resistance. Instead, they were being backed into a corner. Hanlon, still nursing burns, tapped into the Dominion frequencies. The audio was chaos. Orders screamed in conflicting dialects, unit leaders begging for evac, some breaking down entirely. They're requesting orbital support, Hanlon said wide-eyed. They're going to glass the canyon. Mason's jaw clenched. Of course they are. Cowards lose ground, so they burn it instead. He toggled his comm to the Helljumper frequency. You hearing this? A voice came through, gravelly and calm. Loud and clear. That's why we brought insurance. Above them, the clouds parted again. But this time it wasn't dropships. It was Earth's orbital defense cruisers. 2 of them. Massive, jagged silhouettes that blotted out the sun. Weapons ports gleaming, shields pulsing with energy. These weren't evacuation vessels. They were purifiers. The kind Earth had never deployed in over a century, not even during the Martian riots. Now they were here, and they weren't flying flags. They were flying warnings. The first beam lanced downward, striking the outer ridge where Dominion forces had begun regrouping. It didn't explode. It disintegrated. Dirt, rock, metal, bodies, gone in an instant. Just vapor and silence. Mason ducked instinctively, shielding his face from the heat wash that followed. Holy hell, Vega whispered. We've gone full extinction mode. The Dominion line broke. They tried to retreat, but the Helljumpers wouldn't allow it. The black-armored Titans moved with brutal efficiency, cutting down anything that moved. No prisoners, no mercy, just retribution. Mason knew what this meant. The war might have started on Centauri 9, but Earth had made a statement today. You come for us. We don't fight back. We erase you. Captain, Reyes grunted, crawling up from the trench, leg still wrapped in a torn tourniquet. That command crawler's still intact on the East Ridge. If we take it, we get access to their network, tactical data, supply routes, even fleet movements. Mason turned to Vega. She was already loading a fresh mag. Looks like we're not done yet, he said. With the Helljumpers pushing the front, Mason led his battered squad on a flanking route through the scorched rubble. The ground was still hot beneath their boots, the air filled with smoke and the hiss of melting armor. The crawler sat like a wounded beast, scorch marks across its hull, but still operational. 2 Dominion guards remained, unaware of the humans approaching from the blind side. Reyes dropped one with a single shot. Mason handled the other personally, slipping behind the creature and driving his blade straight into the base of its skull. No noise, no struggle. They entered the crawler and found the command core still running. Hanlon's eyes lit up. This thing's got access to the entire Dominion battle net. I can pull their fallback routes, fleet positions, even their encrypted chatter. Mason smiled grimly. Do it. Let's find out where they're running. Because this wasn't just a battle anymore. It was a hunt. And humanity had just started. Inside the Dominion crawler, Hanlon's fingers flew across the alien interface. The data streamed faster than any of them expected. Logs, coordinates, distress signals, and something Mason hadn't dared hope for, locations of primary command nexuses across Dominion-held space. This isn't just tactical data, Hanlon said, eyes wide. They left the whole damn back door open. I'm looking at fleet patterns, internal disputes, even records of planetary resource drains. This is gold. Captain Mason Cade leaned against the scorched control panel, still bleeding beneath his armor. Copy it, all of it, then wipe the core clean. Hanlon hesitated. You want to destroy this? It could be worth... We're not leaving them anything to come back to, Mason said coldly. They brought this war to Earth's doorstep. Now we take it to theirs. Reyes hobbled in, rifle slung awkwardly over his shoulder. What's the word? We just found the heart of their empire, Mason replied. Now we see how hard it beats. By the time they exited the crawler, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The Dominion had broken. What wasn't crushed by the Helljumpers was scattered across the rocks, crawling away in fear. Some tried to surrender. The Helljumpers didn't acknowledge it. The message had already been sent. You either die on your feet or under ours. A field commander approached Mason. His exo-armor was 3 times the weight of standard infantry gear, its arms etched with war kills and unit marks. His helmet hissed open, revealing a hard, scarred face, eyes the color of steel. Captain Cade, he said, voice deep and level. Colonel Dane Rourke, you and your team just rewrote the rulebook. Wasn't trying to, Mason muttered. We just weren't ready to die quiet. Rourke smirked. We don't do quiet anymore. Behind them, the Helljumper squads were already organizing cleanup ops. Corpses were marked and burned. Captured tech was boxed and tagged. Their precision was terrifying. No celebration, no reflection, just more objectives. Hanlon handed Mason a data stick. Everything's here. Dominion fallback routes, fleet locations, civil unrest in 3 sectors, even something labeled Project Harvester. Might be their version of a bioweapon or some kind of extinction protocol. Mason took it, eyes hardening. We give this to Earth Command? Rourke shook his head. Command didn't send us. Not officially. They froze ops after the last Dominion raid on Europa. Got scared. We didn't. Mason raised an eyebrow. You went rogue? We went human, Rourke said. And now that we've cracked their network, we don't wait for orders. We lead. It was a different kind of war now. No longer about territory, not about diplomacy. It was vengeance laced with strategy. A purge of an empire that thought Earth would bow. Mason turned to his battered squad. Vega, bruised and low on ammo. Reyes, still limping but alive. Hanlon, already pulling up projections of the next target. They were worn down, but not broken. They'd gone through hell and come out sharper. You still with me? Mason asked them. Ride or die, Vega said, spitting blood from her cracked lip. Let's kill their next god. Reyes grinned. Hanlon looked up from his display. I've pinpointed one of their primary fleet coordination nexuses. Mid-orbit station in the Veltrax system. It's surrounded by warships, but if we slip in and feed them false orders, we could have them fire on each other. Mason nodded. Beautiful. How soon can we move? Rourke spoke up. The Hammerfall leaves orbit in an hour. That's our ride. The Hammerfall was a deep strike cruiser, Earth's equivalent of a guillotine. One ship, one mission, total annihilation. It hadn't been used since the last rebellion on Titan. Now it was coming out of the shadows. As the crew prepared to board, Mason looked out at the battlefield one last time. Smoke still rose in pillars. The ground was stained with blood, human and alien. But the silence felt earned now. Not like defeat, more like the deep breath before a storm. Next stop? Vega asked as the ramp lifted. Mason tucked the data stick into a pouch on his chest plate and smirked. Wherever they think they're safe. The Hammerfall dropped out of slip space like a blade through silk, its dark hull cloaked in interference waves, silent and invisible above the Dominion's core command station in the Veltrax system. The station, a monstrous ring of black alloy orbiting a blood-red planet, glowed with life. Thousands of lights, hundreds of ships docked. It was the heart of their fleet coordination, and it was wide open. Captain Mason Cade stood on the bridge, the Dominion's network map hovering in holographic form before him. Vega, Reyes, and Hanlon stood nearby, fully geared, eyes locked on the massive structure that loomed like a god's halo above the planet. Behind them, Colonel Rourke and his Helljumpers made final checks. Any alarms? Mason asked. None, Hanlon replied. They think their encryption is uncrackable, for God Earth makes monsters out of broken code. Mason stared at the station, jaw clenched. Then we don't just hit it. We make them rip each other apart while we watch. Rourke stepped forward. When we hit that control nexus, we feed them false commands, just like you planned. Redirect power signatures, fake mutiny signals, make their defense fleet think they're being sabotaged from inside. Then, we blow the whole damn ring, Vega finished with a grin. The operation began at 0200. The Hammerfall launched 4 stealth pods, each holding a 5-person team. One of them carried Mason, Vega, Reyes, Hanlon, and Rourke. They crashed through the outer shielding of the station like ghosts, sliding into its maintenance shafts and crawling through metal corridors slick with condensation and Dominion stench. Inside, the station was alive with activity. Dominion soldiers marched in drills, unaware that the walls were already bleeding humans. The command center, a circular dome guarded by 24 elites, sat at the top of the central spire. Mason's team had 20 minutes to breach it before Dominion patrols changed shifts. Hanlon opened a side panel and began slicing the access port. Once I'm in, I upload the virus. It'll trigger their own failsafe commands, set every ship in their fleet to hostile status, including each other. And the explosives? Reyes asked. Wired throughout the command core, Vega said. We trigger them after the fleet starts tearing itself apart. It was surgical chaos. The breach was fast. 2 flash bombs, 1 shock round. Mason went in first, dropping 3 with headshots before his boots even hit the floor. Reyes followed, blade in hand, cutting down the nearest guard without hesitation. Vega covered the left flank, gunning down the last 2 before they could scream for help. Hanlon raced to the terminal, breathing hard. "Give me 30 seconds." Alarms blared seconds later, but not for the humans. Dominion ships outside began locking weapons on each other. Communications scrambled. False enemy tags flooded the system. Ship captains barked in panic. Someone launched a torpedo at what they thought was a traitor vessel. The response came instantly. Lasers, missiles, plasma bolts. The Veltrax fleet, once Earth's greatest threat, turned on itself like a snake devouring its own tail. Mason watched it all from the screen. "Trigger the charges." Vega didn't hesitate. The command center lit up in orange flashes as the explosives detonated in sequence. The station groaned, its ring fracturing, inner hulls collapsing inward like a dying star. Dominion soldiers scrambled and screamed as the entire structure buckled. Mason and his team sprinted toward the extraction shaft as fire poured down the corridors behind them. The blast wave chased them. Hungry, boiling, angry, a drop pod yanked them free just as the station cracked in 2 and exploded above the red planet, casting debris across the stars like a funeral pyre. From the Hammerfall, they watched the wreckage burn. The Dominion fleet was gone. Their command structure obliterated. Their empire crippled in one surgical strike from a team of soldiers everyone thought was already dead. Rourke turned to Mason. "You just ended a galactic war." Mason shook his head. We just reminded them who they were messing with. Back on Earth, news broke within hours. The once distant, monstrous Dominion Empire was retreating from every front line. Planets liberated themselves in waves. The coalition reformed, this time under Earth's leadership. Not with diplomacy, with fear-born respect. In the end, only 5 soldiers returned from Centauri 9. 5 ghosts who dragged an empire to its knees. And as the galaxy slowly turned its eyes back toward Earth, one message echoed through the stars. Humanity doesn't surrender. It survives. Then it wins. Always.